Shabbat Shalom. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. Hallelujah. Well, I had no idea 2 weeks ago I'd be standing here. But Hector told me I needed to go. He's the elder, so I came. And I'm glad to be here. And I'm here because I feel so strongly about this issue. At first I thought, okay, 8-hour drive. I don't know, it's a long way. I also went to Arkansas the week before. And but as I thought about them babies, I gotta come. And suppose for a minute we were all walking somewhere in town and we saw a child who was about ready to be hit by a car. And one of us was in a position to save the child's life. How many of you would be quick to react to save that child and maybe even give your own life for the child? Hope almost everybody here would do that. And now, what if the child was pushed in front of the car by one of his parents? What if the child's parents was asked, what in the world are you doing? And the parents said, well, I've really been needing to finish school, and I want to be able to get a good job, and so I just decided that, it wouldn't be a good idea to take care of a child right now. So I just did a little shove. Or what if the parents said, well, I made a mistake. I wasn't ready for children. I figured that this was maybe the best thing to do, since the child's destined for misery anyway, I can't take care of it right. Just push. Most of us would think that parent is either terribly immoral or has some kind of a mental problem. But a week ago or so, I read a story about a man who took a 5-year-old child and just hurled him over the bridge and into the water. He's running from the cops. He stopped, took the child, and the child died. And we look at that and we go, oh, how awful. It is awful. Turned out the man had a very serious mental problem. But I want you to understand that that's the mentality we're dealing with today when it comes to the children who are inside the womb. That's the mentality that we are dealing with. And in fact, it's this kind of mentality that causes 1 million mothers a year in the United States to murder their own children. You have the clicker somewhere? All right, thank you. And so I want to talk today about these babies. And just because a child lives inside the womb doesn't make his life any less important than if he lived outside the womb. And, because no one's really seen the baby is thought to not have, the same level of care and love and those things. A relationship has not yet been really established completely. And so, but imagine that. Oh, you only care for the ones that you know and you love and you have a relationship with. Does that really make any sense? I mean, if you've never seen me before, I hope you wouldn't want me to die. I hope you love me enough that if you heard about hitmen trying to murder me, that you would care. Even though you may not even know who I am. If you heard about a situation where one person was going to murder another, would you want to do anything about that? But mothers are told it's not really a person, it's just a fetus. Just a blob of tissue. It's not really murder. And Just because the child's in an early stage of development. What if we took that a step further and said, since all children really aren't even complete adults until they're fully grown, 20 years old, they're at an earlier stage of development, therefore we have the right to murder them if we see fit. Whether they're inside the womb, their location's not the issue. It's how far they are along in their development. Where do you draw the line with that? Some believe that the abortions are acceptable or not that big of a deal simply because the child's not been born. And they say it's a woman's right to decide what she wants to do with her own body. Well, I'll tell you what. Someone are real strong on that. Oh, you don't tell me what to do with my body. You get your laws off my body. It's my personal space. You don't mess with me. You feel violated with your laws. Aren't all crimes committed with our bodies? I mean, all crimes are committed using our body for doing something. But they don't see it that way. Now, okay, don't tell you what to do with your own body. I could almost agree with that to some extent. A woman does have the right to do what she wants with her own body. She has the freedom to do that. Doesn't make it legal, doesn't make it right, but she has that freedom to do that. But you see, it's not really her body she's wanting to abort, is it? It's someone else's body she doesn't want in her life. So the problem isn't what the person's doing with their own body, it's what they want to do with somebody else's body. Because if the abortion was successful and it was really her own body, she would be dead when it's over. It's not her body she's wanting to abort. And so, what about the right of the female who happens to be inside the womb? What about her rights? Doesn't that child have a right to live? Rather than having others decide whether the child has a right to live. The Declaration of Independence Yeah, I've got it on. There we go. Says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So this is where a concept of a right to life came from the early settlers who developed the Declaration of Independence recognized that all men were created by a creator with certain unalienable rights. One of those is the right to life. And so we have a responsibility as believers, because we are supposed to be the most loving people on the planet, because all Torah is about love, loving Yahweh, loving your neighbor. We have a responsibility to love the little one who's inside mommy. We have a responsibility, even though it's not our child, just as we have a responsibility to love each other as brothers and sisters, and we have a responsibility to love those who are outside the body of Messiah, who need to hear about the love of our Savior, who loved us while we were yet sinners. We have a responsibility to love the little ones who are inside mama, who are being murdered every day. And we cannot be passive and just sit back like those who did in the Holocaust. Oh, those Jews are being gassed and killed. Okay, well, sorry to hear that. We have to do something about it. We are our brother's keeper. We have a responsibility to promote justice, righteousness, life. And so, yes, we need to be doing something as a body of Messiah to defend the unborn from abortion. We do have to be doing something because we are called to love. So is an unborn baby really a child yet? Some say no. Yahweh says yes. In Genesis chapter 16, verse 11, the angel of Yahweh said to Hagar, "Behold, you are with child. You are with child, and you shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because Yahweh has heard your affliction." Yahweh referred to the unborn inside of Hagar as a child. That is a child that is inside of you. That means that child was its own person. That child was a person that she was with. Wasn't a part of her. It was a person that she was with. It was a child that she was with. She was with child. And one day she was going to bear the son. But it was a child before she ever bore the son, according to Yahweh. And so in Luke chapter 2, verse 4, it says, "Likewise, Joseph went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea, into the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed wife, who was with child." Who was that child? Yahshua. Recognizing the fetus, as the world would call it, was a child before the child was ever born. And now, since the scriptures say that the woman is with child, we have no other choice but to declare the same. These are children. They are children. They have not yet been born, but they are children. And so the so-called fetus that's growing inside mommy is indeed a child. It is. And to take the life of that, quote, fetus is to take the life of a child. There's no way around it. It's infanticide. It is murder of the worst possible kind. It really is. Think about this. Is there any time in your life that you are more innocent than when you're inside mommy? You couldn't possibly be more innocent than that time in your life, since the time you were conceived. And yet, to murder someone in their most innocent phase of life can be little more than crime of the highest proportions, if you really think about it. Now, I'm not saying this to condemn anybody. That's not my goal here. But sometimes we got to hear the bad news before we really understand the value of the good news. And so, think about this. Name one place in the United States that you would have a 1 out of 5 chance of being murdered there. You walk this, you have a 1 out of 5 chance of being murdered. Who would want to live in such a place? The most dangerous place to live in the United States is not some back alley in Bronx, or it's inside mommy. It's the most dangerous place to live. And that is very sad. Very sad. Certain areas of the world, it's even worse. You know, Greenland and Russia, about half of all children who are conceived are murdered inside mommy. Half. Worldwide, it's 1 out of 5. Worldwide. And believe it or not, this may shock you, but the nation of Israel murders 1 out of 5 of its conceived babies. The nation of Israel today. 40,000 a year. About 20,000 are actually official. They have to go before a 3-person committee and get approval. But it's pretty much a rubber stamp, because only 2% are ever denied. And there's a whole other half another 20,000 besides the 20,000 who are actually approved that just do it and don't even get the approval, and nobody says anything about it. And the most common reasons for an abortion to be approved is the woman's unmarried. That's considered to be appropriate case where abortion is permissible. And they wonder why they're harassed by terrorists over there. Because innocent blood is being shed. They recently approved federal funding for an even larger number of abortions. That another 6,000 abortions over there, as of last year, will be paid for by the government of Israel. And so, the world paid so much attention to the terrorist attacks, right? 9/11, 3,000 people lost their lives. It was huge news. And yet that's about how many children are losing their lives to abortion every day. Every day. And you know what? It's more than that. It is. It really is. Contraceptions, the pill, the birth control. I found a quote from a pro-life website, Pro-Life Wisconsin. They said the morning after pill, which is basically a high dosage of the birth control pill, and most, if not all, birth control drugs and devices, including the intrauterine device, Depo-Provera, the patch, and the pill, can act to terminate a pregnancy by chemically altering the lining of the uterus so that newly conceived child, a human embryo, is unable to plant in the womb, thus starving and dying. This mechanism of action is termed pre-implantation chemical abortion. That's what they call it. So the egg is conceived and it has nowhere to plant, and so it dies. How many more abortions are taking place that way in the United States? Probably far more than 3,000. Some say, oh, come on, that's not really a life, Tom. That's just some zygote, a few cells being divided or whatever. All right. What if that rover is running around on Mars? They found living cells on Mars. They found this life, right, on Mars. They would think that was considered life if they found some living cell that happened to be on Mars, right? They would say, oh, that's life. But then the child who's in the womb, who is in the same basic state, is not considered to be life. In fact, on the slide there, you'll see this is I don't know how far along this baby is. They don't even consider that to be a life. It doesn't make any sense. See, it can't be justified in Yahweh's eyes. It really can't. A child's a child no matter where it happens to live. Inside the womb, outside. I mean, where are you going to, if you're not going to say the child is a child from the time it's conceived, where are you going to draw the line? You'd have to invent your own idea. Well, this time, this number of weeks, there's no hour, minute, and second you could possibly identify as being the time when life begins. And so the only place that would be logical is when the sperm and the egg come together to produce a living being. So in the Torah it says in Exodus 21, it says, if men fight and hurt a woman with child so that she gives birth prematurely, yet no harm follows, he shall surely be punished accordingly as the woman's husband imposed on him. He shall pay as the judges determine. But if any harm follows, you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. The obvious principle here is that the life of an unborn child is just as valuable in the eyes of Yahweh as anyone else. Life for life. You want to talk about crazy logic? Here's one. In the United States, if you come across an eagle egg and you destroy the eagle egg, it's illegal. You could go to prison for 2 years. You could pay a $250,000 fine for destroying an eagle egg. And yet, a human being that is not yet born, or the relation being hatched, perfectly legal, and even government pays for it. Government will pay a woman to do it. Will pay a doctor to do it, I should say. That's insane logic. That is crazy. So the priorities, this is what I'm talking about. The priorities of the people who live in the world today are perverted when our laws value the life of an eagle over the life of a human being. Something is amiss. Something is crazy. So we have 55 million murders. 55 million murders in America since 1973. That's a lot of innocent blood being shed. That's a lot. Innocent blood being shed in a land is a very, very serious crime in Yahweh's eyes. The very first human being who was ever born, Cain, became a murderer. And after the violence that had been done on the earth, Yahweh said, he cleansed it with the flood. He said, surely for your lifeblood, Genesis 9:5, I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it. From the hand of a man, from the hand of every man's brother I will require the life of a man. Whoever shed man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for in the image of Elohim he made man. As for you, be fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply it. See, the reason why murder is such a serious crime in Yahweh's eyes is because Yahweh created us in his image. Imagine, Yahweh creates Adam out of the dust of the ground, but then another entity, whether man or beast, come along and kills Adam. That wound, that would be a personal attack on Yahweh himself, right? Yahweh formed man, someone comes along and destroys him. That would be a personal attack against Yahweh himself. Just as if you were creating something, you build a very, very nice house, and someone comes along with a bulldozer and just mows the whole thing down. That would be an assault against you, right? And it's no different. When one man takes the life of another, it's really a sin against Yahweh himself. And so that's why he says, 6 things Yahweh hates. Yes, 7 are abomination to him. Proverbs 6:16. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood. A heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and he who sows discord among brethren. And so we're talking here about what Yahweh calls an abomination. And I can see why it would be, especially innocent blood. I think about that now. There's no more innocent than the time you haven't even been born yet, as I said earlier. And the importance of not allowing innocent blood to be shed in the land was so high in Yahweh's eyes. He set up these, in the Torah, he set up these cities of refuge. In Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 1, it says, when Yahweh your Elohim has cut off the nations whose land Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, you dispossess them and dwell in their cities and in their houses. You shall separate 3 cities for yourself in the midst of the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess. You shall prepare roads for yourself and divide into 3 parts the territory of your land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to inherit, that any manslayer may flee there. And this is the case of the manslayer. Whoever flees there, he may live. Whoever kills his neighbor unintentionally, not having hated him in time past, as when a man goes into the woods with his neighbor to cut timber, and his hand swings with a stroke of the axe to cut down a tree, the head slips off from the handle, strikes a neighbor, so that he dies. He shall flee to one of these cities and live. Lest the avenger of blood, while his anger is hot, pursues the manslayer and overtakes him because the way is long, and kill him, though he was not deserving of death, since he had not hated the victim in time past. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall separate 3 cities for yourself. Now if Yahweh your Elohim enlarges your territory as he swore to your fathers and gives you the land which he promised to give you to your fathers, and if you keep all these commandments and do them, which I command you today, to love Yahweh your Elohim and to walk always in his ways, then you shall add 3 more cities for yourself besides these 3, lest innocent blood be shed in the midst of your land, which Yahweh your Elohim has given you as inheritance, and thus the guilt of bloodshed be upon you. All this because he did not want innocent blood being shed in the land. He went through all this trouble. The cities of refuge, that's why they're there. Ultimately, it was actually because of innocent blood being shed in the land that Yahweh had the Jewish people go into exile to begin with, into Babylon. In 2 Kings 24, verses 1 through 2, it says, in his days Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim came his vassal for 3 years, and he turned and rebelled against him. And Yahweh sent against him raiding bands of Chaldeans, bands of Syrians, bands of Moabites, and bands of the people of Ammon. And he sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of Yahweh, which he has spoken by his servants the prophets. Surely at the commandment of Yahweh this came upon Judah, to remove them from his sight because of the sins of Manasseh, which according to all that he had done, also because of the innocent blood that he had shed, for he had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which Yahweh would not pardon. That's why they went into exile, because of the innocent blood. Psalm chapter 106, verse 35 says, they mingle with the Gentiles, learn their works. They serve their idols, which became a snare to them. They even sacrificed their sons and daughters to demons and shed innocent blood, the blood of their sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood. They were offering their children to these demons, like Molech, for instance. And that's why they did it. They thought that that idol wanted that, and so that's what they did. It's pretty awful. Talk about devotion. Seems like the idols get more devotion than Yahweh does sometimes. But sacrificing your son, your daughter is a bad thing, of course, to an idol. But if it's an ignorance because you just don't know any better or whatever, okay, that's one thing. But to knowingly, purposely, intentionally sacrifice your own son and daughter on the altar of convenience, or I want to finish my school, or I wasn't ready for a child yet, or, oh, that's even worse, isn't it? Isn't that worse? Really, if you think about it. You place yourself up as an idol, and you say, my will and what I want to do is more important than this child in its life. Talk about cheapening human life. We want to defend, as the conference says, the sanctity of life. That we live in a culture of death, don't we? The place where the children were being sacrificed was known as the Valley of Hinnom. In 2 Chronicles 33, verse 5, he built altars for all the host of heaven in the 2 courts of the house of Yahweh. It's talking about Manasseh. He caused his sons to pass through the fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. He practiced soothsaying, used witchcraft and sorcery, consulted mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the sight of Yahweh to provoke him to anger. And so he shed all this innocent blood. So moreover, Manasseh shed very much innocent blood, though he had filled Jerusalem from one end to the other. 2 Kings 21:16. Besides his sin, which he made Judah sin in doing evil in the sight of Yahweh, this was the innocent blood it's being spoken of, that Yahweh would not pardon. Now, if there's anyone listening to this broadcast today or in this room today who has ever had an abortion, I want you to know this is not the end of Manasseh's story. If you continue reading about Manasseh in 2 Chronicles, you'll find out he got sent away, but then he repented of his sins, and he was restored, and Yahweh forgave him. So he was forgiven for the sins that he had done. They were some of the worst ever in Israel. He was forgiven for them. They had no knowledge of Yahshua back then. And yet he was restored and forgiven because of his repentance. And so, yes, shedding innocent blood is a crime of epic proportions in Yahweh's eyes. But he gives more grace if we're willing to receive it. He pardoned David, didn't he? For his sin, he murdered an innocent man, Uriah, stole the man's wife, committed adultery, and yet he was forgiven. Now, he suffered consequences for it. His own child that was to be born, Yahweh ended the child's life, and trouble never left his house after that. And so there were consequences. But I feel like we need to understand what is really happening in our world today. This is the shedding of innocent blood, a crime of major, major proportions. We have to understand the importance of it because it's all just kind of, we're desensitized to it. Oh yeah, another year, another million abortions. Go sit back and watch a football game. Do nothing about it. I just don't think that is what Messiah would be doing nothing about it. I think that we're called to love. And those little babies in the womb don't have the ability to defend themselves. They can't say, wait, don't do this. So they depend on us to defend them. Defend the sanctity of their lives. Yes, they call it abortion. Yahweh calls it murder. What's worse, it's the parent of the child who's the initiator of the crime. Hiring hitmen to do the ugly work. I'm not trying to hurt somebody's feelings, but that's really what's happening. We have to understand what it is and all the ugliness of it for us to be upset enough and concerned enough that we will take action. Because the spirit of Molech is alive and well. It really is. And like I said, it's probably worse than the spirit of Molech. Because they thought they were doing the right thing, by appeasing this demon. And they thought this is what their creator wanted them to do. But this is just out of self-centeredness. Now, interestingly, this valley of Hinnom, where Manasseh had shed all this innocent blood, later became a place in first century Judaism where they burned all their garbage and animals and whatever. This valley was like a stench, it was this garbage. And that was the valley of Hinnom. And it was the valley of Hinnom that became a euphemism for the lake of fire, commonly called hell. Gehenna. Gehenna is valley of Hinnom. That's what it is. And Yahshua mentioned this, Luke chapter 12, verse 4 and 5. I say to you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that they have no more they can do. But I'll tell you whom you should fear. Fear him who, after he is killed, has the power to cast into Gehenna. I say to you, fear him. And the lexicon here, the Thayer's lexicon says that hell is the place of future punishment called Gehenna, Gehenna of fire. This was originally the valley of Hinnom, south of Jerusalem, where the filth and dead animals of the city were cast out and burned, a fit symbol for the wicked in their future destruction. I find it interesting. The very place where innocent blood was shed became the place as a metaphor with what Yahweh will do with those who shed the innocent blood. Very interesting. So, what would the child say if we were not there to speak for them? What would those babies be saying? You form my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, yet being unformed. In your book they were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. Wow. I know this is David speaking, but this is the closest thing I can find in Scripture to what it's like to be there, what he's describing. And just as it's wrong to kill the child outside this place known as the womb, place of residence does not matter. How many of us remember the Holocaust? Who've probably studied it and heard about it, and some of the younger people, I don't know how much you've heard, but there were 6 million Jews who perished because their life was not considered worth anything. I wrote a poem years ago. A vision of slaughter I have seen in pictures. They seem so far away, yet so near to my heart. How could it be? How could humanity be so cruel? More than 6 million killed in the days of slaughter. Yet many stood by with excuses in their hearts. Some looked the other way, pretending it didn't happen. Well, they're not really human, some said in those days. They're used for medical research, thrown away in dumps. Some were burned, others dismembered, were tortured beyond recognition. But it wasn't Hitler who directed the slaughter I'm speaking of here. It wasn't the Nazis I'm talking about here who brought their doom. It was the doctors and the mothers who killed their own innocent children in the comfort of a mother's womb. The Holocaust is still going on. It's not over. And this time, the most innocent are the target. Far more than 6 million, over 40 million since 1973. On average, 2,756 babies a day are murdered by their own mother in the United States alone. Many would save them and give them a home if only they legally could, and I wish I could. We have a responsibility. I posted this to my website a number of years ago, and how many of you feel this way? There's something I could do. I would. We've got to cry out against it. We have to cry out against it. Remember, wrath will come upon the nation that sheds innocent blood. The earth cannot bear the sin of innocent blood being shed. It will spew man out, or fire will cleanse it. One or the other. And so, just like Ezekiel, he was told, put a mark on those who are crying out against the abominations that are taking place here. Put a mark on them. I'll spare them from judgment. The rest, you're just as guilty. You're not crying out against it. We have to cry out against it. All of us have a responsibility to be actively doing something to deliver those who are drawn toward death. Proverbs 24 verse 11 says, deliver those who are drawn toward death. Hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, oh, surely we did not know this. Does not he who weighs the hearts consider it? He who keeps your soul, does he not know? And will he not render to each man according to his deeds? He puts that responsibility on our shoulders. He does, if we don't deliver them. I think what this means is that we all have a responsibility to be doing something. Something. Big or small, we ought to be doing, everybody ought to be doing at least something. We can't turn a blind eye. We cannot act like this is not happening. We cannot just go sit idly by while children are being murdered. It's because it happens to be in a medical clinic where you don't see it. You don't see the limbs of the child going through the suction machine. Doesn't mean it isn't happening. It is. Now Yahweh put a responsibility before us, as Hector quoted earlier today. In the book of Genesis, it says that Yahweh Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to tend it and keep it. So Yahweh had created Adam and put him in this garden and says, take care of this for me. And so this was Adam's purpose. This is why Adam was created, at least partly, the reason why he was created. And so I want you to understand that he also has a created purpose for all of us as new creatures in Messiah to also tend to a garden. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 35, Yahshua went all about the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them because they were weary and scattered, like sheep having no shepherd. And he said to his disciples, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. There's all this harvest sitting here, and no one's going out and getting it. Isn't there a proverb about the wicked plant, they don't harvest, are too lazy? Lazy man does not even gather what he planted. And so, therefore, pray the master of the harvest to send out laborers. Laborers. It takes work. It takes effort. It takes a vision. A vision. To be able to envision the harvest you are bringing in for his garden. So just as Adam was created to tend to a garden, we have a garden outside this. We got garden right here, but we got garden outside the walls here that we're supposed to be tending to as people who are serving Yahweh. He wants us to be a laborer. Now, not all of us have the same function. Not everybody should be behind a microphone. Not everybody is going to run sound. Not everybody is going to help with the meals and things. Everybody has a role in the body of Messiah, but we all have a responsibility to be doing something, to be active in the body of Messiah. Remember what Yahshua said about the sheep and the goats. The goats, they looked at the needs of the people around them, and all they did was do nothing. That's all they did. They saw the needs. Oh, there's a sick person over there. There's somebody in prison over there. I'm sorry to hear that. Pray for you. Be warmed and be filled. Right? And that's all they needed to do was, in order to be a goat, was do nothing. Whereas the sheep, they're out there taking care of the sick. They're out there caring for the needs of others. They see the needs and they care. They love. They love, and so they do something about it. They care about the other person. And so this is what I'm trying to get us, the church mentality is, there's the ministers, the laborers up front, and then there's the pew warmers in the back, who sit back and, pay for their services. You serve me for this much money, and you'll be, and that'll be my relationship with the Father, and it's more, this is a daily thing. We got to take it home. Got to take it right here. No one's a pew warmer, really. Nobody is called to sit back and be served, last I checked. Nobody. Yeshua said, came and spoke to the disciples, he said, all authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things I've commanded you, and lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. So Yeshua has been given all power and authority, and the inhabitants of the earth have been given over to the enemy. They've chosen him as their ruler. Satan didn't become a ruler of this world because Yahweh said, go rule this planet for me. No, he told Adam to rule the planet, and Satan took that position and said, I'll be your ruler, I'll take you. I'll take you where you want to go. And that's how Satan became the ruler of the world. Yeshua said, all power and authority is given to me in heaven and earth. Put them under my tutelage, under my care, under my shepherd. Let them be my flock. I'll be their shepherd. So our purpose, our created purpose in Messiah is actually identical to the created purpose of Adam when he was placed in the garden. Look at this. It's amazing. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing and teaching them to observe. So it's not just go out and make a convert, say a sinner's prayer and walk away. Make them disciples. Make them taught ones. Teach them to observe the things I've commanded you. It's not about saying a prayer and walking away. We got to serve people who come into the body of Messiah, yes. But in order for them to come into the body of Messiah, we got to go out and bring them in. But that's identical to what Yahweh told Adam and Eve to do in Genesis. Be fruitful and multiply. He's telling us the same thing. We're here. He's saying, be fruitful, bear fruit, bring souls in, be a laborer in my harvest, and multiply. It's really the same. So, I'll tell you something. We're always happiest when we're doing what we're created to do. We really are. It's awesome. Years ago, we had these ducks. We bought ducks. I don't eat duck, but we had a pond in front of our house, and just thought it'd be really neat to see ducks, kind of floating around there. Look out and see the green grass and the ducks enjoying the water there. And so we went out and got these Muscovy ducks, and they're the only ducks that can fly. That's domesticated, I should say, that can fly. And we got them from somebody at a swap meet there in Missouri. And these ducks had never seen anything other than this little plastic tub, where the children, a little weighted pool for toddlers and stuff, you buy at Walmart, gigantic tubs. That's all they'd ever seen as far as water is concerned. And so we set these ducks right there on the edge of our pond. Now, we were concerned they might fly away somewhere else, because they have all this freedom. But so what we did was we just set them there for a couple of days. They had the water to drink because we put them right on the edge of the water, and we fed them as they're in this cage. And they were chomping at the bill, I guess you could say. They're sitting there looking at that water. And let me tell you, when we let those ducks out of the cage, I've never seen nothing like it. It was glorious. They came out of that cage, and they were just flapping and splashing in the water, ducking their head down, their little tails are waddling. They were just having a great old time. It was like they had been in prison for how long and never seen anything other than what their reference point was this. this little tub of water, and they see this pond, and it's like, wow, And the reason you could see the jubilation that they were manifesting because they were doing what they were created to do. Right? And that's like us. We are going to be happiest when we are doing what we are created to do. And what we're created to do is this. That's our purpose from Genesis chapter 1. To be fruitful and multiply. To bring more children into the kingdom. That was Adam. He said, go for it, be fruitful, take care of the garden, and multiply. Bring more children in. And Adam, if he had stuck with it, would have been happiest having done that. But that's not how it turned out. The first child that was born from Adam became a murderer. We know the rest of the story. Yeshua came to bring us back to what? If there was, I think Mike Abadeska said one time that there was one verse that sum up the Bible, it would be, let us make man in our image. Yahweh made Adam in his image. Adam chose not to be in his image. He chose to sin. And so, come back. Here comes Yahshua, who actually walked in the image of Elohim. And because it's no longer we who live, it's Messiah living in us, we are restored once again to the image of Elohim. That's the goal. That was Yahweh's intent in the very beginning. Let's make man our image. And he wants to make others in his image too. And we have that calling on our life to do that. And I'll tell you, we'll be happiest if we're doing that. Think about the joy you would have knowing you saved a life. My wife, years ago, there was a friend of ours who was going to have an abortion. And she sat in the car with her and played 2 songs by the Cisco, Texas group that were written, aimed at tugging at their heartstrings and bringing those who were considering abortion to a place where they would not choose to do so. Very beautiful songs. And she played those 2 songs, and the woman chose not to have an abortion. And the boy was born, was named Duncan? Dylan? Okay, well, it was a long time ago, 15 years ago maybe. And it turned out the child was born almost on her birthday. So, but there's a satisfaction. You see the child being, moving and breathing and being, to know that if you had not been there to intervene for that baby, that the child would be, in some sink somewhere, or some trash can. And so there is joy in doing these things. There is joy in it. And this is why I'm saying I had to kind of tell you the bad news before I could tell you the good news. The bad news is there's really awful things going on. The good news is we can do something about it and make a difference. As soldiers in Yahweh's army, we are called to report to duty every day and go forth and do exploits for the King of Kings. As a people in exile to Babylon, we are seeking to gather together an army of foot soldiers who are willing to not think they're in a time of peace, because we're not in a time of peace. We're in a time of war. And it's the most important battle in the world. It's a war for the souls of people. Battle for the souls of men and women. It is, nobody's on the sidelines. There's no cheerleaders in this battle. There really isn't. There's no spectators. We're all in it. Right now, there is a battle going on for your soul, for my soul, for Hector's soul, everybody. There is a war going on. And it's not some sport you watch every once in a while. It's an ongoing battle that's going on. It's happening right now. And we're called to recognize the battle and do something to join the side of Yahweh in his ways. Not sit back and watch and cheerlead. Do something. Do something. And you think about the ramifications of this war, and it has eternal consequences. Eternal consequences. Eternal ramifications. Anybody see the dot? Little tiny dot right there on the screen. How big is that dot compared to the room? It's pretty small, right? Not very big. How big is the dot compared to Chicago, Illinois? How big is the dot compared to the state of Illinois? It's a little speck. I mean, how big is the dot compared to the entire planet? That's just a speck of a little. How big is the dot compared to the solar system? How big is that dot compared to the universe? That dot represents our life compared to eternity. Because our time here is so minuscule compared to the trillions and quadrillions and decillions and however many illions of years there are in eternity. And the decisions that we make today, the things that we do today, affect what happens outside the dot. And we need to have this mind. This is what Yahweh sees. And everybody is focused on the dot and what goes on the dot, what people think of them while they're in the dot, and what they can get while they're here in the dot. But if we can look outside the dot for a minute and look at eternity and look at the kingdom and what he's offering us, we need to have a vision for that. We need to instill a vision for life outside the dot in the age to come, and the lives of our children. Pastors have a responsibility to instill that vision in their congregation. I see the children here, the young people, and they're doing a lot of great ministry. Don't just watch them, join them. Be a part of it. As we encourage them, do it yourself. Wonderful. Think about that. Are we spending our time being a part of the solution, turning people to righteousness? Or are we acting like the treasures Yahweh offers us outside the dot are not that big of a deal? There was Jacob and there was Esau. Esau didn't really care about the blessing of Yahweh. He just kind of, he cared, but when it come down to time he was going to die for it, he said, I'll give away my birthright. Here, just give me a mess of pottage, please. What good's it to me anyway if I'm not alive to enjoy it? He did not have a vision for life beyond himself. But Jacob, he would not stop until he got the blessing from the angel. I will not let you go till you bless me. Sell me your birthright. Now, he did it in unscrupulous ways. But he valued it. And that's the question for us. Do we value it? Do we value his blessing that he's on? When Yahshua said, if you knew what was waiting for you when people said evil against you and used you and cast your name as evil, he said you would leap for joy. You would leap for joy. Imagine that. Someone's saying something terrible about you. Woohoo! Yes! Chalk one up for me. I'll take it. They look at you like, what in the world are you? You got some hope inside of you I don't know about? Yes, I do. Absolutely, I do. This is what I'm talking about. We got to get out of the this world mindset and look to eternal things. Now, everything we do will advance the kingdom of Yahweh or the kingdom of his enemy. Every thought, every decision, what I'm going to do today can advance one kingdom or the other. And there are practical things that we can do to advance the kingdom of Yahweh in terms of saving souls. 2010, most of my ministry is online, EliYah.com, online ministry. I don't have a lot of time because of the busyness of that to do a lot of local ministry. But one time, 2010, we went out on a 3-month-long ministry trip, 10,000 miles. And we didn't take any money back because I said, I can't really afford the trip, but if anybody wants to send in some donations for gas and for lodging, we took an RV, camper, send it in. I'll just go as long as I need to, however long I can, see what happens. And donations came in. Requests for visits came in. People needing baptized. We ended up going 10,000 miles, 21 states, and 63 baptisms. That was Yahweh. Really. Now, 2 of the families we ministered to and with are here in this room today. Hector and Reese Velasquez, they're in the back corner. They lived near Washington, D.C. at the time. And we visited them, and we went to the mall there in Washington, D.C., passed out tracts, and almost got in trouble because we were passing out tracts to the Lincoln Monument. We weren't supposed to do that there, but we, did some ministry there with them, and that was a great blessing. Another family ministered with was the Nelson family. They wanted baptized, so we baptized them all, and then we went and did some ministry together. And they lived at that time in New Orleans. Now they live in Wisconsin. Talk about weather extremes. But and then Hector and Reese, they now live in Michigan. But you think New Orleans, this is not too far long after the hurricane went through. You think, okay, that's pretty much the armpit of America down there. I mean, it's pretty immoral. And we as believers, I've always thought, where are all the believers in California? You can't hardly find any. It's because whenever you do hear of one, or I hear of one, in California, one of the first things they do is move out of California because they don't want to be around all that debauchery. But I thought, okay, in New Orleans, obviously, Yahweh, judged that town pretty severely. And but you know what? New Orleans became one of the highlights for us in ministry. It really did. We went into the homeless shelter, and Nelson family and our family, and I think there was also Glenn, Jen, Robin may have came with us that day too. They're probably watching the broadcast right now. But we went out into this homeless shelter, and when we went into the homeless shelter, they wanted us to do some volunteer works, and it was amazing because we weren't even supposed to be there. They had like a 2-month-long waiting list, and to even go there and volunteer. But just by a miracle, it opened up, and we were going to get to go there while we were there in New Orleans. And so we ended up going through all their donations, and so they said anything that's not any good, just toss it in the dumpster over there. So we go through the things. Oh, Santa Claus figurine, that's no good. We don't need that. Christmas tree decoration goes in the dumpster. So we threw away the Christmas items. Didn't we? I thought it was pretty crazy, but it was junk. It really was. Well, there was a gentleman next to me, and he says something about he keeps the Sabbath day. Really? He works here and he keeps the Sabbath? That's interesting. And we heard they were going like this discipleship program, this Bible study they're doing there at such and such time. And we walked into the room where they're doing this class for the homeless men, And on the whiteboard, the name Yahweh's there in Hebrew. And we sit down at the table where the men are going to be taught. And I look over underneath the VCR or DVD player, a Messianic, like a Brad Scott DVD there. And then a guy comes in. We find out this homeless shelter, the biggest homeless shelter in New Orleans, is run by a Torah-observant believer in Messiah. And he brings homeless people in and disciples them to Torah and Messiah. Of any homeless shelter, it's the only homeless shelter we visited on the whole journey. And of all of them we could have gone to, this is where he put us. And they are serving the homeless there. And they invited me to share a message the following day, and I did. I told the homeless man, look, Yeshua was homeless. Disciples were homeless. It's because you're homeless don't mean you're worthless. They turned the world upside down. What can you do? It's because you didn't come here to be served. Go out and serve. Go talk to your fellow homeless men about Messiah, what he's done for you. Do something. And quite a few come up after me and were moved by what I shared. So, and then we were going to go to the abortion clinic and do some protesting. And so we got some signs together, started making up these signs. At Walmart, they got these big styrofoam, real light, very light, I don't even know what you call them. I think they're made by Borden or something. And then some lettering, and we, this is one of the Nelson girls putting the sign together. And then I think this, I'm not sure who this might be, my daughter, making this sign here. And so we got these signs together, and we went down to New Orleans Abortion Clinic. And our plan was to do some protesting there. And so there we were. This is a picture of us there in New Orleans, and we're all walking the sidewalk there. But look at the sign, what this says here. We'll raise your baby until you can. And this was birthed out of that poem. I wish I could do something to save them. And I tried to look at this from Yahweh's perspective. And so, okay, we might take a baby into our house, love it, nurture it, care about it, raise it. It might be 2 years old, and the mama comes back and says, I want the baby now. And because we didn't try to take legal custody, here, there you go. It's your baby. We did the best we could. That would be a hard thing to do. But it saved a life. It saved a life. And so it's worth it. And so women have adoption as an alternative. But what if they're like, I wish I could have a baby I just can't right now. I just can't. But if they had the hope that one day they may be able to raise that baby, maybe a year to get their life together or whatever, they might choose this option. And so we held these signs up, and the truth is, if you're willing to do this for this woman, think about what kind of ministry that would be to her. Think about this. That would be a family willing to serve her for a year, 2 years, by taking care of her baby for her. Isn't that a manifestation of what Messiah is really all about? Being willing to serve people? Isn't that really what it's all about? This is where the rubber meets the road. You can keep Sabbath days, keep the feast days, and not eat pork. That's all easy stuff, man. Do this, something like this. That's self-sacrifice. That's what Messiah is talking about. Not just speak against abortion. Be willing to serve. Serve in a large way. Listen, brothers and sisters, Yeshua kept telling us we have to be serving. You want to be the greatest, you've got to serve. And by offering to serve in this very selfless manner, We are manifesting the life of Yahshua to this world. And we had people, the Nelsons were already foster parents. They've adopted children. They are already in that position. There were other families who offered to do this as well. And what we need is an army of families willing to do this, and an army of people willing to go out and save those babies. The truth be told, in all likelihood, offering to do that will open the door of ministry to the mom, to where she may become a believer before the baby's even born. And then she would be the one raising the baby. And then she would be coming to places like this. This is what I'm talking about. And so, it raised some eyebrows in town. But I'll tell you what happened. One of the women who actually worked at the abortion clinic, I couldn't believe it the first time I heard it. I wasn't there when it happened, but one of the women who worked inside the abortion clinic, a counselor of the women who decide whether or not they're going to abort or have the child or adopt or whatever, she came outside. She saw us walking around with these signs. She goes, something to the effect, I can't quote it verbatim because I wasn't there, but it was something to the effect of, you guys would really do this. You would really do. You would take someone's baby, raise it for however long, and when they said, I want the baby back, you give the baby back to them. Yes, we would. Save a life. If that isn't a witness for the importance of the sanctity of life. And so she says, are you an organization? No, we're just a bunch of families that got together, and here we are. We just wanted to do something. I've got a website, I've got a ministry, I'll give you my phone number, but we weren't an official 501c nonprofit and all. I don't do any of that stuff. So she said, there may be some women who want that option. I'll keep your phone number. And think about this. This woman counsels people to maybe murder their child. Who knows what she was. How can two sides be so far apart, come together and say, hey, what about this option? And they go, well, maybe so. That's what being Yahshua-like is all about. That's what we're called to do. Bring us together, at least in this one point. Okay? Now, another amazing thing happened that day. This is all a divine appointment. I have no doubt in my mind. I want to mention this before I go on. Why do mothers choose abortion? According to statistics, 75% say having a baby would interfere with work, school, or other responsibilities. Maybe they want to finish school. Maybe they want to get a better job or something. This gives them an opening and something they can, okay, I'm not ready right now, but here's this family willing to do this, and so maybe we could work something out. 75%, they can't afford it right now. This is the reasons they give for abortion. Now, we talked about how insane that is at the beginning of our study today, but we're providing a solution. 50% said they don't want to be a single parent. Or they're having a problem with their husband or partner. Who knows if we might step in and say, okay, we'll take care of the baby until you get their problems worked out, and they're going to be like, okay, well, can you help us? We're having this problem in our relationship. Can you help us? Yahshua is the answer. And we've just manifested Yahshua to them. That's what it's all about. And 12% is just a health issue. And we've learned that that's sometimes overblown. But the greatest anti-abortion protest you can have is to save the souls of men and women. Because once they become a believer in Messiah, they're going to value life like we do. And then that turns people away from abortion. One soul at a time. That's the greatest protest you can make. The second greatest is to go out into all nations, in the trenches, and talk to them. And intervene for them. And deliver those who are drawn toward death, as Scripture says. Now we've got some other places we turn heads. This is Washington, D.C. Rob and Jennifer Smith were there, and we were just a few blocks from the White House here. And we're standing out there, and there were some counter-protesters across the street. But we turned some heads, and then, here's a really good point. One of the Nelson girls came up with, one person can change the world. What if it's your baby? Really good point. We don't have to put a big old ugly sign up there to change hearts. I've seen some of that. I've been a part of some of that. We did some really radical protesting in Branson. This guy had a sign of a baby being, really ugly, being aborted. This is when I first started off, and it was at least from here to at least halfway to the ceiling and across. It was gigantic, and it just angered people. I mean, they just, within, and the guy I was ministering with goes, within 5 minutes we'll have a cop here. He'd done this all the time. Now, cops can't do anything. You're on public property. As long as you keep moving on the sidewalk, you're not blocking anybody from, traversing the sidewalk. If you keep moving, you can't stand still. They can't do anything about it. It's a public area. The woman came out of the tourist center there, we were in front of the tourist center, and just cussed me out. I mean, literally cussed me out. And I just kept saying, I love you anyway. Love you anyway. She didn't know what to do with me. She just turned around and walked away. So, and there were people, it ruffled feathers. I mean, the people were angry. And I just started thinking, maybe someone will look at that and decide not to have an abortion because they realize what it really does. It's not a blob of tissue. Maybe they have a point. But, and maybe there's a place for that, but I don't know. I kind of like what we did there in D.C., in New Orleans, and we also went to North Carolina, I think one other place, and I like it better. So, now I feel like I need to, I like this. Who can resist that picture right there? And, her name is Harvest. That's her name. Oh, what a fitting name and a fitting picture. And when you take your children out there, I think that's a witness too. That this is children. They see, this is what children, look at those beautiful children. I want children. And so this is the difference we can make. Now, all of us can make a difference. We really can. And so when I was invited here, this is, the vision I'm hoping to communicate that will hopefully result in a call to action. And there's also a lot of families listening online and also in DVD. We have a DVD we send out every week. So now what's the root cause behind the abortion? Here's the abortion, the problem with abortion, but what's underneath the abortion? What's causing the abortions to begin? What's causing the pregnancies that ultimately result in abortion? The hidden sin underneath abortion is lust. It really is. It's lust. And the sin that's really kind of underneath lust is the provocation of lust through immodest dress and loose behavior and mass media, including photos and videos of such. And so sometimes I really wonder if people understand the purpose of intercourse is to have a child. The way the world's mentality is, it's almost like this child shows up. It's an intrusion in my life, and yet this is the purpose for the act to begin with. This foreign object shows up. Oops. The world is so perverted and so fixed on having its rights to have intercourse with whoever, wherever. They've forgotten the natural law that exists, what this act is really for. And so the connection between intercourse and babies, they don't have any room for that. That's why they want contraception, so they can think they have their cake and eat it too. But as usual, who bears the brunt of the parents' mistakes? The children. The most innocent in society are expected to pay for the crimes and improprieties and improper behavior of the adults. Because two people want to have the pleasure of intercourse without having a child in the picture, they murder the baby. That's insanely immoral. One thing's immoral to have, the abortion, but they want that. I know virginity is not valued that much today. Instead, we got these boyfriend-girlfriend things going on, and people acting like they're married when they're not married, and there's no commitment to each other. And so there's these children showing up because they do things they're not supposed to do until they're married, and therefore we have abortions. Millions of them. Irresponsible, deadbeat dads, children who have no father in their lives, are 70 times more likely to be fatally abused than children who don't have a father in their life. 70 times. Serious. In Yahweh's system, there are no unwanted pregnancies. There's no women getting pregnant without a responsible father there. In Yahweh's system, there's no venereal diseases. Doesn't exist in Yahweh's system. In Yahweh's system, a child will be assured of the stability of having both a mother and a father to raise them. It's only man that allows himself to be led by his own flesh rather than Yahweh's Spirit that results in all the problems that we have. Broken homes, adulteries, lusts, these end up hurting children. They hurt children. If you don't hate lust now, think about what lust causes. Babies to be hurt, children to be hurt, fatherless children. Yahweh has a heart for the fatherless. He has a real heart for the fatherless. And so, what a mess. It's no wonder Scripture says, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. All that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, it's not of the Father. It's of the world. And the world's passing away, and the lust of it, but he who does the will of Elohim abides forever. Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, ultimately produces abortions, broken homes, and unwanted children. That's where it leads. It's the driving force behind abortion. It really is. If there was no lust of the flesh and lust of the eyes, there would be no abortions. Each man will possess his own vessel in sanctification and honor and save their lusts for the one and only wife that Yahweh has provided them with, and rejoice in the wife of their youth, and drink water from their own cistern and not another. And so, yes, abortion is a sin, and we ought to make a strong stand against it, but we need to understand the driving force behind it and make a stand of moral purity, modesty in dress, be a part of the solution rather than part of the problem. Imagine if a way a person is dressed, some man thinks, man, I want some of that, and goes and has unbiblical relations with someone. A child is born, or not born, a child is conceived and then murdered. I just couldn't fathom being a part of the equation of something like that. I wouldn't want to be. I would want to be an agent for Yahweh, to bring people to righteousness and to life, not to unrighteousness and death. So if that doesn't make us hate sin, hate lust, hate sexual sin even more, I don't know what else will. I mean, that's where it leads. So why don't we say our children deserve a better future? Let's be pure in our conduct. Let's be pure in our dress. Let's be pure in our behavior, the way, and set a standard for the world to look up to, because we love children. Modest dress is revealing a love for children, because we're helping to be a part of the solution rather than provoking lust in others. So, children come into our lives. They are completely helpless. They are under our complete and absolute control and power. That comes with a huge responsibility. Huge responsibility. Will we love them? Will we love them? That's what Yahshua wants to know. Will we love them? Will we value them the way he did? He said, "Let the little children come unto me, forbid them not. Of such is the kingdom of heaven." That's the value he places on their lives. You want to know the true morality of a nation? Look at how they treat their children. You'll know. Now, our nation has laws that allow for child abuse of the worst kind. Death by dismemberment in the womb. Burning children in saline solution. It's high time we do something about it. We, as Yahweh's people, should not be content to sit back and let the Christians of these various churches around us, go out and do their anti-abortion stand. We've got to make a stand. We've got to be part of this also. Maybe more so. We need to be doing something to deliver those drawn toward death. We all have a role of some kind of calling in this area. Look, just take the first step. Something. And keep on walking. And watch what happens. Maybe Yahweh has you involved in another area. Some people have different callings, different areas of concentration to which they minister, and that's okay. But I really, again, feel we all need to make a stand in some capacity for the sanctity of the lives of the most innocent ones among us. And if we do that, Yahweh's with us. All of heaven's with us. Standing there with us, and no one will be able to stand against you because he's with you. Don't sit back and wait for somebody else to lead. Take the step. Get started now. Tonight, let's do it. Let's do it. Because the most powerful being in the universe will be with you. And if he's with you, that's all you need. So, I'm calling us all to accountability today. All of us, myself, all of us. So as we go about our Father's business, may Yahweh bless you, and may Yahweh have mercy on us all. Thank you.